So, Mark, I'm going to try and pronounce your surname. Like Mark Jawdoszak?
Really close. Very,
Oh,
very close.
okay. So, Mark, tell us, do you work in video games? Do you work for a company? What do you do? And where are you as well?
So I'm the managing director on paper of Gaslight Games. We're a Bradford-based games development company. I'm also the lead programmer. We're a small studio, mostly doing a lot of outsourcing for other companies. So we've worked across indie, AA, AAA, all over the country, but most predominantly, especially these last sort of 6 months and 12 months, being in the West Yorkshire region, and sort of trying to keep things here and keep remote and to sort of certainly stay within this region because of what it's doing and growing as far as video games are concerned.
I'm amazed at just how many indie games companies there are in this region. There's Just Add Water, Fat Kraken, Red Kite, TT Games down the road, Cooperative Innovations. There seems to be quite a lot, would you say? Or
Yeah, definitely. If you go back, now we're going 20 odd years ago, there was Team 17 down in Wakefield, and then sort of before them there were other studios all in the same kind of roughly in the same region, and it's been a constant boom. We can attribute a large portion of it to the Screen Yorkshire and then offshoot Game Republic. And so those have certainly helped to drive what we've got and keep a lot of the talent inside of the Yorkshire region. That's certainly when I talk to many of the other indies. They've worked, like myself, we've worked all up and down the country, and we keep getting drawn back because the people are good, the talent's good, and the support is there.
And I suppose as well, it might be nice to live in London or LA or Sydney or San Francisco, but actually there's lots of opportunities to work within this sector, in one of the loveliest parts of the world as well. As a lot of people would travel from those places to come here, like Naila, who I spoke to the other day, traveled from Belgium to come and work over in Yorkshire as well for a company.
So, yeah. Well, I myself, I didn't quite go as far. I'm originally from Coventry, and I moved up to Bradford. I went to university at Bradford when I was 18. So now that is several years ago. And I've just stuck around. I've made some really close friends, and I adore everything around here. I only live now out in Huddersfield, so I'm not actually all that far away, but we maintain an office in Bradford, which we hope to get back to eventually. And with everything else, like I've mentioned, sort of Game Republic, and there's Gamma Yo, so it's Game Maker Yorkshire. We have meetups sort of every quarter, I think every 3 months, with Yorkshire Games Festival at the Media Museum, and these kinds of elements means that we don't have to travel to the other side of the world. Like I've spoken Develop down in Brighton. I've been to GDC in San Francisco, and don't get me wrong, they're amazing, and I would do them again if I could afford it. But being able to have it here, the Yorkshire Games Festival, as I've mentioned, last year or 2 years ago, we had John and Brenda Romero, so the creators of Doom and Quake, coming here, which would have ordinarily been, we'd have to go to the other side of the world, Austin, Texas, or California, to be able to see them, and having them come to us. It's not the price is making it more affordable, because otherwise that's thousands and thousands of pounds in flights and hotels. So being able to have that talent come here is a big deal.
I'm still trying to figure out a little bit more. Like, do Gaslight, do you develop console games? Is it games for mobile devices? Do you have like a speciality that you work on?
Over the last 10 years, we've done a little bit of everything. So we've done mobile games, console, some VR. The giant screen in Centenary Square, we actually worked on a game for that, which was motion controlled, along with the University of Bradford, UNESCO, and the Media Museum as well. So we've done a little bit of everything. The last sort of 4 or 5 years have been console. So we've worked on Guitar Hero Live, worked on the new Fast and the Furious, and most recently I am working on Robot Champions, an online game with Unreal Engine.
I'm just like others. I'm amazed that all of this is going on in this part of the world. And also, I was just smiling and I was thinking, I think I've played some of those games that were in the Square, and maybe people watching think, "Gosh, yeah, that they remember that." So you when you were 18, you said you travelled to Bradford, which you might have thought at the time might have seemed a bit risky. When you were younger, did you think, "Oh, that's what I want to do. I want to go to university and learn how to design, code, make"? What were you doing when you were like in your teenage years? Were you teaching yourself how to do these things at home? Was there a teacher at your school that highlighted things for you? What was it?
I can literally remember the point. So now people are going to figure out how old I am. My very first console was a Sega Mega Drive, and I remember playing it, and it was the Jurassic Park game on it. And that's it. This is what I want to do. I knew this from that day. I think I was maybe 10, maybe 11. I was like, that's it. I want to make video games. And then as I started to try to learn and try to create them, we're going back a long time here. The technologies were very, very expensive. You couldn't get Unreal Engine or Unity for free. If you wanted these things, they were thousands of pounds. So, you had to make do with a demo and keep rolling back your clock to have your 30 days if you wanted a little bit more. And then in school and college and university, I didn't really apply myself. I got a bit more distracted than I maybe would have liked. I certainly didn't do the work. And I do recall my A-level maths result. I got a U. My maths teacher was absolutely fantastic. And I know this now because of everything I do. I've made a fluid mechanics simulation. So that's a real-time water simulation that works on mobile, and many of the techniques were the same ones that I was taught in my degree and at A-level. And oh, that's how you do it, and that's what that means. Oh, it's actually not that difficult. And it took me 35 years to click, but if suddenly I'm just going, oh, okay. And for me it was the context that video games brought and still brings. Every time I come across a new thing, like we met some folks from Amazon a couple of months ago, and they were very proudly telling us that Fortnite transmits more data, about 40 times more, than an experiment at the Large Hadron Collider.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, and so it's like even Fortnite, so video games, we do more data than out of the LHC, and somebody has to process that. So somebody has to be a data scientist, but still doing video games. And what we do is single-handedly the most complex piece of software that you can write. And I get arguments from people who write things for rockets engines and things. And once you start going through the list of everything that a video game has to do, and we have to do it as fast as we have to do it, so every 16 milliseconds, they kind of go, yeah, all right, fine.
Surely, though, at some point when you were younger, there must have been, I don't know, adults, teachers who said to you at some point, "No, Mark, that's not going to work. Are you sure you want to make toys and things for people to play with? You're never going to be able to earn a living from that kind of thing. You want to get yourself a proper job." Did you ever have any of those kind of conversations? Or
I have it, and I still have it now. You make video games? Oh, you should totally talk to my 10-year-old. And usually do. They're more clued in with what's coming out than I am because I sit all day making them. But it is a very more than a viable industry. Certainly now, the last 6 years, well, I think it's 7 years, but every year the media industries release numbers based on how much the returns and the investments are. So that's film and TV, newspapers, books, video games, TV, etc. And the only two that have consistently turned a profit for the last 7 years have been books and video games. So we make more money than films. There are more video games in the last 3 years that have made $1 billion than there have been films, including the Marvel ones. So the techniques and the technology it's so much more available than it's ever been. You can build a game on pretty much anything. I think I saw the other day somebody was running one on a Samsung fridge. So this idea that what we're creating is just toys for kids, or it's not. There's no point doing it. I keep coming back. It is the most complex, but at the same token, it is the most fun and it's the most rewarding. I could quit and go and get a huge job in the banking industry, and just no.
The other thing that strikes me as well, as the games sector, the industry has just grown and grown and grown, so have the amount of different roles. I mean, you can have people who only ever work on the back end stuff, like in terms of making sure that the links between like you said, the Fortnite server and all the data is there. You have people who spend their whole every 18 hours a day sometimes just on character design, anatomy of figures, people who only ever create trees. So you're going to have people who've obsessed, passionate about art, other people about the machinery, the hardware, of course, which you barely mentioned. There's just so many opportunities out there.
Yes, absolutely. I think some of the more interesting things from my side. So obviously, I'm a programmer, and I sit down and I write the code, and it's the most dull thing if you're not a programmer. But I created this system a few months back that allowed our robots in the game to regenerate parts and heal. And it took me 4 days to just get the first pass working, so that the server verified and told everybody else and all these things. And an artist came in and added a wonderful effect and some glow, and then boom, and everybody went, "Oh, isn't it wonderful?" But he was right. It looks fantastic. And he was very adamant to say that he was able to take what I provided and create this thing on top of it. But the even further beyond this, the fantastic folks at Valve, so they make the Steam download software, but they also do Half-Life and Portal. And when they were doing Half-Life 2, in order to make sure that the levels, the city felt like a real living, breathing city, they got an architect in and a civil engineer, so that when they designed the city, it felt like a proper thing. And then the artists turned that into proper levels that could be played. And this is the thing that we can do. We're seeing it more with, I'm a big advocate of the Unreal Engine, and we're seeing a lot more movie directors use it to do pre-visualization. So they create all the sets in Unreal and just pop on some VR goggles and walk around the set. When James Cameron did Avatar, and he did his whole system sort of 15 years ago, he spent £1 million making a server stack so that it could see on an iPad, basically, because the iPad didn't exist at the time, to be able to see this set. And now you can do the same thing with a laptop. So the technology has leapt to being able to do things in whatever it is you want to do. So like you say, art, characters, sound, music, architecture, making movies, it's limitless.
I'm listening to you talk about it. I'm thinking, I think I've chosen the wrong career path. I should have. This is something that I should have done. And I can also listen to you talking about the kind of work that you've done. It sounds like you'd be a strong advocate for working in an independent company. I mean, some of these, I've visited other companies where there's like 200 or 300 people all working on one version of a game that for 2 or 3 years before it's released. That you must feel like, in that kind of situation, you're one tiny cog, whereas you're a smaller team and you're able to do things quite quickly together. Would you say it's more fun in an independent company than some huge, is it, what are they called? There's one EV, EG. I've forgotten the name of it.
Well, I've worked across the whole gamut of it. So I was at Activision. So it used to be called Freestyle Games. They're now an Ubisoft company in Leamington Spa, and that's somewhere down in the Midlands. And I was working there, and across the world there are about 400 or 500 people working on Guitar Hero, and we were a small team. We were about 20 people working in UI programming, and as that game is entirely UI, almost everything fell onto us as far as the visuals, the final visuals. Again, there were artists who created it, animators, but there were so many elements to that part that if you were, some of the guitars didn't quite work. So we would go back to the engineer and say, oh, what are we doing wrong? What's going on with this? That would go to the gameplay to say, how is the fretboard appearing on screen? Would go to the audio engineer to say, is this supposed to come through on the left and the right channel and all these things working correctly? So you had all these experts and had access to this incredible range of talent. And then when you come to go independent, you are that range of talent. And I think before I went to Activision, I did about 5 years of independent working with lots of smaller companies. And we kind of constantly fighting against the time and the scheduling to deliver. And then as soon as you come out of a AAA environment where people think, oh, that's it, you're going to get totally drained and demoralized. And it was wonderful and fantastic, and they treated us brilliantly. But coming out of that and going back to independent, it's all of a sudden going, well, I'm not a writer, or I'm not an audio person. I need that person. It's like, how much do they cost? I'm going to do it myself again. And it just exposes you to all of this, again, all this talent. But being able to come around to this one more time, the technology is now so readily available. You want to record a sound for like sound engineers, so they do what's called Foley. So you want somebody walking on a path, you put a microphone down, you walk on a path. You can just do that with your mobile phone, and a little bit of cleanup, and now you've got custom sounds in your game, not having to pay someone for it or find a sound that's not quite appropriate. And it's the same across absolutely anything. You want a piece of tech or a piece for the game, piece of an image to use, a background image, just go and take a photo. And you can just plug that in, and most of the tech, Unreal, Unity, they'll take care of a lot of it for you.
So if we could, it's been so enjoyable listening to you talking. Like I said, I'm going to change career path. I want to do what you're doing. If I was maybe 20, 30 years younger and I came to you and said, Mark, where should I start? I can't at the moment go to college or university. Those options are not available. Are there any resources you'd recommend that people could learn from? Or
well, certainly one of the biggest things is to take a look at some of the technologies, so like I mentioned, like Unreal and Unity, and there are so many others. There are some that might be a little easier to begin with as well, to understand the flow. So there's one called Game Maker, which is fantastic. There's the Adventure Games Maker as well, and all these various ones. And so the first thing that I say to people is, if you want to make games, is to make games. That is rule number one. And whatever you're thinking, it needs to go smaller than that. No, it's not small enough. Even smaller than that, smaller, all the way down. Distill it to the absolute smallest piece you can and finish that piece. And not only will you get a tremendous satisfaction from finishing it, but if you try to build Fortnite out of the box when that's got 1,000 people at Epic, it's just not going to happen. And unfortunately, it's not going to. I wish we could have more of them. But if you start with Pong, or start with Frogger, or start with something, look to the 80s. We didn't have the hardware to do it, so we had to do it on make do with what we had. And think of something like that, and just build a clone, build your own version, and now you've got an idea of how to do that thing and move forward. And right now there are so many great YouTube tutorials. There's lots of great forums and communities, but myself included. If you just reach out to games companies and ask some questions, it might take us a couple of days, but we will reply. I don't know of another studio, certainly in the region, that will just ignore an email. And again, I'm getting a bit old there. It's not WhatsApp or Messenger. It is classic email, I'm afraid. But if you do that, then we can at least point you in the right direction. And if you say, I don't want to program, I want to do art, that's another thing entirely. That there are lots of resources and ways that you can start to build, and just start building.
They're some of the best bits of advice I've ever heard, because the first one, when you said, if you want to do this thing, do it. Don't wait. Even if, say it's like, oh, I think I want to code games, and I go away. No, I've tried it. I don't like it. Well, then don't do it. Simple. And then the other thing you said, actually, think small. A lot of people say, oh, think big. Think, what's the biggest, best? And that's so frustrating, because you're never going to realize, you're never going to build that big thing. And it's to think of something small, and that's already too big. You need to think smaller again. So it's almost like, look at this hand I made for this character. And look, I've managed to get one finger to move, but look at how convincing that movement is. Mark, it's been so enjoyable to chat to you. I hope we can do something like this again. And I'm going to be looking out for you as well. So you'll probably be at the next Yorkshire Games Festival, I'm guessing.
Yes, assuming that there's one that can happen, we will be there for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
All right. Thanks a lot.